Yo, what up, bro?
What's up, Will? How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
Good, bro. Good. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday, bro. My favorite day of the week.
Trying to force that on me. I'm trying to force
Yeah.
myself to like Mondays.
Got to, bro. Like, listen, if you can hack Mondays, the rest of the week is a breeze. That's what I've been telling myself for a couple years, and it seems to be working, so I'm running with it.
Yeah, facts. I gotta take that. Steal that.
Awesome, man. All right, give me just a second, and we'll go ahead and kick things off.
Yes, sir.
I make sure I got all my gadgets working order, and we should be good to go. All right. All right, so yeah, we're good to go. I think I just wanted to have my note taker in here, but I think ultimately we should be good to go. We're recording. So anyway, we're live, man. But yeah, appreciate you you hopping on and willing to share your story, your journey into cyberspace because you definitely have a non-traditional background and I definitely want to share that with the world. And so I think we could go ahead and just jump right into it if you're cool with that.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, awesome. So, tell the people, Adonis, a little bit about yourself. Like, what were you doing before you got into cybersecurity, before the program? What did your career look like? That sort of thing, and we can go from there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, for the people that don't know me, I'm Odanys. I joined the Psy Authority in March 1st. So prior to that, I had been a personal trainer. I was in school for nursing. So I was about, I think, two more semesters and I had been just done and I can go to nursing school. And then like I had an accident happen in 2024 and I basically had to pause my life for a bit and I couldn't really work as much as I wanted due to injury. And I was taking my nursing license and it just my body wasn't holding up. So I pivoted immediately to plan B, which was something involving IT tech and cybersecurity offered a form of flexibility that, nursing and personal training, for example, didn't. So what I did was I took time to do some research, independent study, and I got some certifications. And prior to joining here, I was making 48K. I'm very blunt and honest about that. I wasn't making a lot of money. I hated my schedule. It was sales, so it's one of those like you get one, you lose one, you get two, you lose two. So it's just constant trying to play keep up with that, helping, the gym hit their numbers, but not really being compensated rightfully. So I was upset in terms of that, but everything works out. Everything happens for a reason. So that's a bit of my background. As you can see, is non-tech. I wasn't working help desk. I wasn't a sysmon or tech admin or anything like that. Just completely just fitness fanatic. And I took a chance and it's the best decision I ever made.
Wow. Wow. I appreciate that. And, thank you for being, vulnerable to share that. But, and I just want to say this, disclaimer. I want you to be completely transparent with me and with, for anyone who's watching this, like I want them to know, like even if it's not beneficial to us, just be transparent, give everyone watching the honest truth. And, are you cool with doing that? This way they know.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I'm
All
an
right.
open
So,
book.
yes, sir. So, in terms of like, how long were you in that role? Because you were doing some physical training and then you were pursuing, healthcare, totally different career. So, how long were you going down that path or in that role as a trainer?
I started March 2022. So I moved from New York February, a month prior to that. So fitness and nursing was something that was like a fresh start type of thing. But yeah, like it's crazy to look back and see like the progress, to see like how much time flew by. But I was in that role for 3 years. I was in school for nursing for coming up on two. And I didn't like either. Could be quite honest with everyone. I didn't really. I enjoyed helping people, but I didn't enjoy, the sales aspect. I didn't enjoy always having to, work even on my off days, market on social media and things like that. It was grueling, and school was annoying as well. I did 2 years, and then I was going to do two more of nursing school. So I would say like 4 years total. I was in that window of training, working full time, and in school afterwards. It was rough, but you could either complain about it or you could do something about it, you know?
That part. It's funny because you kind of answered one of my next questions that I had planned on asking you, which was, where did you feel stuck? And like, what was that ceiling that you were hitting and how long you were there? But it seems like altogether, between you doing the physical training job you were doing before Site Authority, the healthcare, journey you were pursuing, like in totality, would you say like maybe like 4 years that you
Yeah,
were?
that's a
Okay.
good window. Yeah, four
Okay.
years.
Okay. And how did you first, I guess, hear about the Cytharity, VSOC Incubator program? Like, where did what actually made you stop scrolling and like pay attention wherever, whatever means that was?
Yeah, yeah, of course. So I would say it was about July of 2025. I started healing. I started getting more functionality, more mobility. My back started to feel better. So as soon as that happened, I immediately woke up and said, I'm not making excuses anymore. I'm not like before it was mostly doctor appointments, talking about procedures. But once everything was cleared and the case was closed, it was mostly, what am I going to do now? Am I going to go be a nurse? Am I going to go back to training? Or, I looked into cybersecurity and I said, I don't know a lick of anything, but I took the Google Coursera course just to give me some foundation. I did the CompTIA Network Plus, the CompTIA Security Plus, and basically, as soon as I finished the CompTIA Network Plus, I saw your ad on my Instagram. Like literally the second I walked out, they gave me my phone. They said, "Here's your phone, your keys." Obviously, they take your stuff, your
Hmm.
belongings, and they give it back. They say, "Congratulations." I open my phone. I call my parent. Oh my gosh, I passed. I go on Instagram and I see you. I see William Sims, and it's like if you're an IT professional trying to break into cybersecurity, certifications alone won't do it for you. You need hands-on experience. You need technical experience. You need to be in the role. And then I started scratching my chin and my head, and I'm like. I'm doing all this work to build logic and build certifications, but then I can't sit behind a tool and do the work.
Mm.
Even like for people out there, I had a conversation with you prior to even joining, like 2 weeks before even joining. You gave me the breakdown. You told me, the tools that we use, how it works, and I was in awe because I thought the certification alone could carry me and it couldn't. So this is like something that it was perfect timing. It shaved off 2 years of my journey. I
Wow.
didn't need to go get a degree that I didn't need or go do, those boot camps where you pay so much money and you get nothing. You know, best timing. I'm a believer of God. Thank God it happened. And like I said, best decision I ever made.
Wow. Amen to that because I definitely am too. And I mean, you went through a pretty substantial, accident. And so, for you to be able to like really bounce back from that and, hit the ground running, dive into this, new career, it takes a lot of guts and bravery because you're not the only person that I've ever spoken to. As a matter of fact, most people that I speak to, um, are pursuing certifications or have a few certifications, or they're like, hey, I'm pursuing my Security Plus, or I just got my Security Plus, thinking that that is the anchor that they're going to use to then, be able to go interview and get a job. And it's just like, I don't want to be the, you know, messenger of bad news, but at the same time, I want to be realistic that that's not quite enough. It's just, the industry kind of pushes that narrative, and it's unfortunate. But, again, you kind of answered another question I had, which was like, what were you thinking when you first saw this program? Like, what questions did you have? Um, what was I guess, the answer that made it like click for you? Like, okay, like you're coming out, you just got your Network Plus, you're thinking I'm good to go. And then like you see an ad and you're like, well, what made it click for you that like this is something that you should do? And I know we spoke and you took 2 weeks, but like, what were those, I guess, things that made it click for you?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I'm always like a fact checker. If it's a person, if it's information, I use AI, I use open source intelligence to fact check. So,
Hmm.
even before you told me that, even before, I did like a self evaluation of like, my LinkedIn, for example, and my progress. I didn't have experience. And even AI and Google, for example, told me that Network Plus, Security Plus is just like the baseline of HR screenings, but it doesn't ensure anything. You can get a phone screen and you're done. So
Right.
I knew I had some gaps to fill. I knew I needed some skills to build on. But what I did know was that I've been into gaming and I've had a computer since I was 16. I'm 23 for context. So, I've been around, malicious hackers, people downloading, pirated games or Trojans, people just trying to steal your information, operating system. So I just had like, just a baseline of networking. I knew where settings were, where deep window settings were. So I was able to, use that to my advantage. But in terms of everything else, I knew I had to, work a little bit harder, especially
Mm,
coming from, not a tech background. Nobody in my family does tech. They're either immigrants or they work just regular, just regular jobs, Costco, janitor. So this was like a big step, but I wanted to build a legacy as well. I
mm.
wanted to show people that you can come from nothing, lose everything and still get it back, as long as you just work hard.
That part, that's real. And when you first decided to make this decision to like invest into the program, how did that feel? Like, what was going through your mind? Because it's an investment of time, money, resources. Like, what were some of the thoughts you were feeling?
I was honestly nervous. And I'm sure you know this, but for people out there that don't, like I had planned a trip to California before I even spoke to Will. And I got on the phone with Will just for some context to see, maybe I like it, I'll do it. But I went on that trip and it was just a 3-day solo trip, check out California, watch a Warriors game. And the whole time it was in the back of my head. I just kept thinking about it. As soon as I got back to the hotel room, I was like, just thinking about it. Every time I had free time, I was thinking about it. And I was like, you know what? If you read books on, how to invest, on how to get back what you lost, everything says you have to spend money to make it. You always need to spend a bit, even if it's a little bit, it's a lot, it doesn't matter. There's always context. But I knew at some point I had to spend a bit of money to make it. So
Mm,
when I sat there and weighed out the pros and the pros outweighed the cons drastically. Honestly, the only con was that the money part. If you scratch away money and you just ignore the dollar sign, look at everything you're getting. On top of just tool exposure and lead analyst mentoring you, like you get a full-on mentor. You get someone leading you throughout the way. A community of analysts with like-minded goals, similar mindsets. Like it felt like I was home, and even coming from, my personal struggles, not afraid to admit I was depressed for a while. Like even that uplifted me, you know?
mm,
Having a set routine Monday through Thursday, same time, same people, same routine, learning the same things every week, every day. That's what pushed me
mm.
because, I need purpose. I need something to work hard towards. And once I figured out I loved it, it's weird saying something, I love something in 4 months. You wouldn't tell someone you love them in 4 months, but it's the craziest thing ever. 4 months in, I'm like, yeah, I love it, So I trusted God. I just kept pushing forward and the rest is history.
That's amazing, man. It's crazy because like I'm hearing you say this for the first time. Obviously, we've been working together for 4 months. So, um, I guess before we pivot into um, after you joining the program, what was that like? What was that thing that I guess you could say made you pull the trigger? Because people are, they got their certifications. Most people who, interact with us or reach out, they don't have money. Money is definitely, excuse me, an issue. They don't have experience. What made you say, I'm doing this? Like, pull the trigger.
Well, honestly, like for me, all in all, even like with the work situation, I've always been stable financially. Like not to say I'm rich, but I do well with saving money, budgeting. I don't spend money. So I knew I had some money to spend. So I was already willing to. But
Mm,
even regardless of that, honestly, like the fact that I take a vacation, that's for me. So like my parents really don't text me, my friends don't text me. It's just me time, right? So the fact that that was still there, just me knowing who I am as a person, thinking about it while I'm at a Warriors game watching LeBron play. He hits a three and I'm like cybersecurity. I'm like, you know what? If this is if this is what I'm thinking about, just do it. I told myself, even when I spoke to my parents, they were iffy. They were like, oh, we don't know. It's a lot of money. And, I told them, I said, this is something I'm willing to take, full ownership, accountability on. And then look what you get out of it. Worst
mm.
case scenario, let's say I can't get a job. Now I'm ready for a job, regardless of what it may be. I've been in a SOC before. I've used the tools. I've done investigations with help, without help. And, from there, you just build on it. You build on it.
That's big. Wow. How old are you again?
I'm 23.
You're speaking spicy, man. You're speaking like you're 43, but that's excellent. I mean, wow, kudos to you because LeBron hits a three, and then you're saying cybersecurity, and LeBron's he made his way to the East Coast. He's going to be in Philly, so I'm hopefully going to be catching a game this year. But
That's
all right,
awesome.
cool. I wanna change gears. So let's talk about now you joined the program and walk us through what happens next. Like, what was your first couple weeks like?
Well, my first day of the program was the day before my trip. Me, I'm a workaholic and I love to get ahead of
Hmm.
schedule. So we actually had a conversation and William told me, he said, if you want to start today, go on your trip, come back next week, you can do that, or we'll see you next week. And I said, you know what does, one day do? So let me start, introduce myself to the team. I was nervous, I had butterflies, my hands were sweating, but that means I care. That means that's something I'm passionate about. So I embraced it and I just introduced myself to the team. And from there, William, to name drop Richard, Moise, like they welcomed me with open arms from day one. They showed me the ropes. I'm curious, people that are willing to ask questions, they always get fed. If you're quiet and you don't ask questions, you stay quiet, you don't get fed. So I just picked, who's in charge here? Let me pick his brain. Who else is in charge? I picked his brain. And I just kept picking everybody's brain, asking questions and questions and questions. And then from there, it clicked. And then as I'm doing this, I was doubting myself in the beginning and I started using myself as a testimony as well. Like, you know what? Everybody in here doubts themselves. Everybody in here, lacks motivation sometimes. If I could lead by example, maybe everyone in here could do it as well.
Wow. Wow, that's incredible. And you actually are touching on something that I tell people when they get a job, they need to be focused on, which is when you first get a job, what does your first day, week, month, 3 month trajectory look like? And you kind of did that, not knowing it, but like when you came into our organization and program, you did exactly what I would suggest, which is understanding the key players, knowing who's who and being able to take advantage of those different resources, build a rapport with those people so that you can be set up for success. And that's something you're going to do now that you got a job and you're going to be starting. Um, when you get into any organization, even before you get into an organization, a lot of times companies will conduct a KYC, a know your customer. And then when you get into that organization, it's like, okay, who's in charge of this? Who's in charge of that? Understanding the key players and what responsibilities they oversee, building rapport with those individuals, teams cross-functionally can really be the differentiation between joining an organization, hitting the ground running, and then you just kind of being lost and kind of, not knowing what, why, when, how, that sort of thing. So, that's important that you did that. I want to make sure that we highlight that. Um, Now to kind of, you know, touch on what something you mentioned earlier. When you came into the program, you were doing physical training. So you were working as a physical trainer for a gym. And I think you were making, and correct me if I'm wrong, around like 45, 48K or something like that.
Yeah, 48K.
Okay. And you were feeling stuck. Where are you at now? Like, what is this new role? Like, what's your title? The company, if you want to share, just were you able to double your income after going to this program? What did that ROI look like? Anything there that you want to, how long did it take? That sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah. So for context, I 10x my ROI, so that's something big. That's something that I was excited about. But my position, I work now, I start August 10th at Cybersecurity as a security analyst tier two. I was in the program, I was inside authority for 4.5 months. So, like I said, everybody's progress is different. I know most people give themselves 3 to 6 months. That's what I gave myself. That's the time frame I told myself, but I committed to it. I kept going hard and the results paid off. But in terms of, you know, where I came from, I'm not going to have to worry about finances. I'm going to be able to live my life, travel if I want to, pay my rent, pay my bills if I need to, and still save.
Wow.
And like I'm a simple guy. I'm boring, quote unquote boring. I don't like, Lamborghinis or yachts or anything. So, that won't be an issue, but that it's just beautiful to see like what hard work does. What an investment, what hard work and passion, what it could do. And it's fully remote as
I
well.
was going
So
to
I don't,
ask, is this a remote role?
yeah, yeah, fully remote. So it's 4 days fully remote. I'm not gonna have to leave my house for anything.
That's
I don't
awesome.
need to drive to. a company or clock in anywhere. It's really just open my laptop and get straight to cyber work.
That's awesome. So you were able to double your income and you were able to get 10x your investment, meaning 10x what you paid to join this program. You were able to get 10 times that in your first job. No college degree?
No degree.
No degree. What about you were doing IT before this, no?
I took one course, and for context, it was regarding A plus, the CompTIA A plus. It was
Yeah.
regarding that information, and it was a 5 month course breaking the A plus down. When in reality, when I look back, I'm like, I could take the A plus by myself and finish it in 2 months, and then take the network plus in 2 months, security plus in 2 months. That's three certifications in 3 months. College, I was in it for 4.5, and I felt like I was stuck. And I guess because where my head is at, where my mindset was at was fast track. How could
Mm,
I beat the line? How could I work hard? So I
right.
guess since I knew the fundamentals, it was too easy, but I took a risk. If you look it up online, it can give you like three different scenarios of how to break into cyber: the help desk, move your way up way, the degree way, and the risk way. Where if
Mm,
you do a boot camp or a program or self-study, I took that risk. And like I said, best decision I ever made because
wow.
I was able to pace myself, I was able to learn, and then I was able to apply that. As I'm learning, taking my, self-learning certification work outside of work, I come to work and I could apply that to the VSOC.
Mm. That's awesome. And you said security analysts too. A lot of people they're going to get their security plus, their A plus network plus, and they say, I want to go get a, entry level, which we don't even know, entry level pretty much doesn't exist anymore, or a tier one SOC analyst role. You said security analyst too, so this isn't a tier one role.
No, no, it's two, tier
That's
two.
awesome. That's awesome. Um, Now I want to also ask you another question. So, would you say your experience in Site Authority in the VSOC Incubator program was not as good as you expected, or a little better than you expected, or beyond what you imagined? Like, what would you say there?
I would definitely say it was better than I expected. And not to sell anything, but honestly, like when I joined, I was expecting maybe 10 people max. Like what people don't realize, this is over 30 people, and this is full calls. This isn't like, you join a college degree call and it's like you see a bunch of X's or absent. Like, no, this is a full call and this is with real people, and that's what helped me keep showing up, and that's what pushed me, and
Mm,
it made me feel like as if like I said, I'm young. I know everybody's mindset is different, but I'm 23 and I was like, I'm in a real job now. I'm not working minimum wage cooking, or I'm
mm,
not doing, someone's work that they don't want to do and they'll just pay me for it. Like real purpose, meaningful work, where if I don't, if I get fired or if I don't do my part, it's an issue. That's the type of, job that I wanted. That's the type of responsibility that I wanted, to take pride in my work, be proud of it. And, training, I loved helping people, but as a human being, it didn't fit my needs. It maybe made me happy, but it didn't fit my needs, especially long term to be a homeowner, maybe start a family one day. I had to take a step forward,
mm,
especially like it's hard, I'm young, my peers, maybe they're out doing things they shouldn't. A lot of people aren't even, excluding age. It's hard to find just driven people, people to motivate you and like, let's go every day. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Just keep going every day. Like it's hard, and this was it. This was that community,
mm.
of analysts that just keep showing up. Everybody's different. Everybody looks different. Everybody talks different. But, I kept showing up and then everyone else kept showing up and then we just kept learning from each other. And like I said, just amazing community.
Wow. That's incredible, man. You're ahead of your time. I'll say that, Adonis. You definitely are ahead of your time. It's quite incredible, and kind of just I think it's important to highlight. I remember when you go through the interview process, and because at one point in the program we do some, once you can display technical proficiency and you pass your mock interviews and you kind of go through that training onboarding, we'll apply to jobs on your behalf. Can you kind of speak to how that was, that experience, like if you felt like that was helpful to you, like the application process that we took on? And also I want you to touch on the At one point you had gotten an interview, went the full extent, and then we had there was I guess the door or window closed, and then we had a conversation, and then, I just want you to speak to like that aspect, like, because a lot of people, they don't realize it's the job search a multi-dimensional approach. So having the skills and experience, right? Having a solid brand to attract inbound leads, and then having a proactive strategy to apply to jobs is not just, I'm going to take a resume and apply to 100 jobs, but, can you kind of talk a little about how that our job application process and strategy helped you get to this, point, what that experience was like?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So for VSOC, the mock interviews was something that helped me build my skills. Because then I was able to go take what we learned in the VSOC and like not quiz myself. Can I
And
speak
for
about it?
context, people don't know. So, like, what resources were you taking advantage of to prepare for the interviews? 'Cause I don't think, people aren't going to really know, what you were using for that.
Yeah, yeah. So for in terms of the recruiter, we had a recruiter here at Authority that, like you said, if you met KPIs and you were able to get a certain score on your AI interview tool, then you were eligible for that. So I was thankfully eligible, and she was able to put in 1,200, I think 48 applications in just around 3 months. So for context, before I even joined here, and like as my process from March to May, I only applied to 60 jobs.
Mm,
She was doing 60 a day.
wow.
So, in terms of the recruiter process, she was able to tally, the total. She was tallying the daily, how many she did the day. She was tracking it on our interview application as well. And then from there, what we were able to do here at Authority is you take a job description, you could paste it in our AI interview process, and then it generates a mock interview. And then from there, that's what I practiced. So for every role that she was applying for, maybe I do five, six a day or five, six every other day. I would just practice based on these roles that she was
Mm,
applying for. And then from there, when the real interview came, it was easy. Like, just to be quite honest, it was easy because everything that I was expecting already came at me in the interview. And these were more, I guess, easier human questions, given that the AI is probably going to be more harsh, quiz you harder, be
right.
more, detail oriented and things like that. But once come the actual interview, I'm confident, I'm not shaking, I'm not scared. But to touch on what you stated before, this was just, almost a month ago. We're July 27th. A month ago around this time in June, I was in the second round, moving to the third round of this company that I actually signed the offer for. And it was for a different position. It was the same title for a different shift. And I got moved to the final round. They loved me. They said I basically, got it without, telling me that. Obviously, you can't take their word, but after that, they filled it. They called me like hours later and they were like, I know we told you we loved you and we had no problems with you and that you got it, but we filled it anyways, and that was something that crushed me because at that point, I would say I was about 1,000 something. I'd spoken to 20 companies and I got moved, I got every interview was a different part. So maybe I passed a technical here, I was in a behavioral of another one. But it was just building reps and it was a lot of no's. I kept getting a lot of no's, the automation on LinkedIn, we're not moving forward with your application. I kept seeing those everywhere. And it
Mm,
was demoralizing. It was distracting me from my grind because, as a human being, you want things to work out. So, me feeling how I was, just being quite honest, I called you directly and I told you exactly how I was feeling, that I've been putting in the work. And, sometimes things just don't work out. And one thing I read a lot online and that I've learned from my experience, breakthrough usually happens when those thoughts start to come. When you start working really hard for 5, 6 months, and then out of nowhere, imposter syndrome comes. I'm like, I need to overcome this because something good is about to happen. So I kept practicing. I kept practicing. I kept going hard, doing my independent study, using the tools, sending messages to the Slack on weekends. Like I'm still using it on weekends, just to get all the experience I can get. And literally the next day, they called me for another position. They got moved forward and I got the job, so just staying persistent, just like a malicious actor would, staying persistent, you know, just keep going, finding ways to answer their questions. Um, it paid off in the long run. Just and it's funny because they even brought it up in the interview process. Like this guy would not leave. I applied to 4 different roles when that one closed. So I told like I want to be here. I really want to be here. And everything worked out the way it was supposed to.
wow. That's amazing. You gave a lot of gems just now, but one thing I say in a quote that I came across is a winner is just a loser that tried one more time. Right. And that's like based on what you said just now. Winners lose more than losers even try. So to win in this game and in life, you have to be able to fall down 99 times and just stand up 100, and then you win. Right? It's like there's that like, gif or that um
The meme,
image, that meme, yeah, where it's the guy, he's digging for the gems and the gold, and he's right there, like one more strike of his
the axe or
that
whatever.
axe that he's holding, and he'll literally just like stumble upon immense wealth. And he stops, he turns around and walks the other way. And then there's a guy right underneath him in a similar tunnel who's literally pressing forward about to strike, and he's walking away. That's the difference between winners and losers. And you definitely, my friend, are a winner. I want to pivot real quick because I want to make sure we touch on everything and we're wrapping up here. But what would you say are the top three biggest aha moments you had being in this program? Like when did it finally just like, click? Was it a coaching call? Was it a shift?
It was definitely, I would say, I remember the day too. It was my first threat hunt that I led. I had been hammering the run books, playbooks, just to understand the workflow. And
Mm,
every day I logged on shift. I'm a memory person. If you tell me I messed something up, it's gonna stick. No matter what, it's gonna stick. So those rules stuck in the back of my head. So then, as soon as I logged in, it was like, all right, step one, step two, step three. And as I was leading it, I'm doing this in my head, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's working, it's working, it's working. So now I can do this. Now, not only can I do it, do it by myself, I could teach it now. If people
mm,
have questions, I can answer it. So that's the first one. My first ever threat hunt. You were there. I was able to write it. I was able to finish it before the shift ended, all by myself. So that was something I was proud of. The second one was the turnover and just logging into all the tools beforehand. So for people that don't know, the turnover in a real cybersecurity environment, it's like a handoff sheet, just talking about, how our shift went in terms of
mm.
alerts and things like that. So taking initiative, every time our call started, unmuting, I'll lead. Unmuting, I'll take it. Unmuting, I'll do it. Because
I
most people
remember
won't
that.
anyways. Yeah, most people won't anyways. So I'll do it. I'll show people there's nothing to be scared of.
Hmm.
And then in terms of the final one, I would say just being proficient in all the tools, because I know it's intimidating. We have a lot of enterprise tools here that companies, MSSPs, private, public sectors use. So maybe they get intimidated. Microsoft Defender, for example. But I took the approach of understanding and mastering one, being proficient in it, being able to speak about it, and then pivot directly to the next one. And then do the same thing, pivot directly to the next one. And I took this approach for every tool to the point where now I'm a powerhouse. Now, when I sit down with MSSPs, I'm no longer trying to prove myself. It's more so, look what I can do. Look what I got for you. I can do this off day one, and you don't even need to train me. And that is what stuck. When that happened, I knew I reached the top, and I knew that the work wasn't done, but it was something that I could say, I'm proud of.
Wow. That's like that's a mic drop moment right there, because that is what I aspire for everyone to be able to say, is that look what I can do from day one. In this market, you have to be able to hit the ground running and contribute from day one. Because honestly speaking, you have to think of it from a company's perspective. It has to be a good deal for them, right? Companies got to be willing to pay you 100K plus in instances, and you're going to get to work from home and get to do a mission critical role, and they're going to need to hold your hand, and you're going to need training wheels. No, you need to be able to hit the ground running, contribute, improve systems, workflows, procedures from day one, not be trained on how to ride the bike. At that point, why are they paying you for it? So the fact that you were able to have that aha moment and be like, yo, look what I can do now, and get into an environment and be able to like contribute, that's why we started this in the first place. So that is amazing. Here's my last question. My last question for you, for people watching this right now, because there's going to be a lot of people that see this. For people watching this right now, and that they're in the same spot you were in or worse. making minimum wage. Maybe they're making 40K, 50K, working in IT, and that's even more than what you were making before you started, and in tech. So for the people who are feeling stuck, who are nervous about making this investment in themselves, what would you tell those people, right? They're on the fence and they're not sure if they should do this. What comments or advice do you have to them?
Yeah, for sure. So, if you have a dream, chase it. And it's that simple. And if everybody's dream is different, maybe to make the NBA, go pro somewhere, maybe you make $1 million. But if cybersecurity happens to be one of your dreams or your goals, go for it. This isn't a field for everyone. So you already know you have to look in the mirror. You know that you're the right person for this. And once you get past that, from there, it's all up to you. It's all up to how bad you want to do it. It's all up to your pace. It's all up to your desires and your needs. Everybody's, like you stated before, some people may be broke, some people may not have, time on their hands. But if you have the time, if you have the money, if you have the dedication and the drive to do it, I would say do it now, not tomorrow, not next week, because if you keep waiting till you're ready, you'll die. You'll wait forever and it'll never happen. And for me personally, I would rather live a life with scars and tell my kids and my grandkids, I tried this, I tried that, I failed, but I did it, than to say, I wish I would have did that.
Mm,
Or I wish I would have taken the risk. Or I wish I worked for cybersecurity. I could be remote now.
mm.
Instead of wishing and having regrets, go for it. And if cybersecurity is that for you and you're just missing experience and you need a community and the right mentorship, this is it. This is it right here.
Wow, I lied. I got one more last question. What's the most dangerous program in cybersecurity if you're looking to secure your future and freedom in cyberspace? What's the most dangerous cybersecurity community on the market, and what do you rate it on a scale of 1 through 10?
Definitely broke my scale, so beyond a 10 out of 10. Cythority is the name.
Let's get
Cythority Incubator, and I am a Cythorian.
let's get it, my brothers. Congratulations, Adonis. You came, you saw, you conquered. I told you when you got your first job, that's your new ground floor. It's only going up from here, bro. But congratulations for everything that you've accomplished in the last 4 months. You're not going anywhere on us because I still expect to see you on our shifts and still expect to see you in the community in the program. But way to go, bro. I just got to say, way to go. You did it. And
Thanks,
you
bro.
earned it, bro. So congratulations.
I appreciate it. Thank you for everything.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your time.
Always, bro.
All right.